All right, hello everyone. Thank you for joining the Hawaii Cyber Lions Club in our conversation tonight. My name is Chris Lumley, president of the Hawaii Cyber Lions Club. From the Hawaii Cyber Lions Club side, I'd like to introduce Peggy Oyama, Loyal Merhoff, Gavin Hall, and Ken Dewitt, and I will turn this over to our guests for introductions, and then after that, I'll make a few housekeeping comments, and then we can begin. So if you all will, please.
I'll start off. My name is Cheryl Bellisario, and I work within the Office of the Governor's Coordinator on Homelessness. And I'm so happy to be here tonight. Thank you.
Hey, I can go next. So I'm Scott Morishige. I'm the Governor's Coordinator on Homelessness, and I'm very happy to have Cheryl on my staff. I'm a social worker by training. I've been in this position for about 6 years. Actually, very grateful for the Hawaii Cyber Lions Club for helping us out with donations during the pandemic. Really helped our social service homeless provider partners. And I think that's a good transition to Laura.
Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Thielen, and I'm the Executive Director of Partners in Care, which is basically a support organization for all the homeless services on Oahu. I've been in this position for just over 2 years, but I've been working in the field of homelessness and housing for about 25 years, most of it here in Hawaii, a little bit in California. But thank you so much for having us tonight. This is a great opportunity for us to share what we can do and also to share our thanks with all of you for all that you do.
All right, thank you. Just a few housekeeping comments for everyone in attendance tonight and for everybody watching on YouTube. For everybody watching the replays on YouTube, one of the golden rules that helps us out a lot is to hit the like button and subscribe and follow for more notifications. For everybody in attendance, if you are not speaking, if you would be able to mute yourselves during the course of this, and then when you have questions or whatever, then you can unmute yourselves. Also for those in attendance, as happens with Zoom conversations, if you are not fully dressed for the occasion, if you need to step away from your computer, if you could also please turn off your camera so that way we don't have any noteworthy conversation pieces. That said, I will turn it over to our guests to begin their presentation. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you for those notes. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay. All right. So as you guys know, I'm Cheryl, and I'll be presenting tonight with Laura from Partners in Care. She is the executive director. And first, I just want to say that, you know, how appreciative that we are to be here with you tonight to provide a basic education and overview of some of the barriers that many of our local low-income individuals and families face when searching for a safe and stable place to live here. We hope that this introduction to this topic can help navigate further ways in your community to raise awareness and create a dialogue that helps contribute to getting more people housed off the streets, you know, out of homelessness, out of unstable housing situations. So because of the engaged and connected members that are in the Hawaii Cyber Lions Club, we are asking for your help in reaching out and communicating this message further in ways that make really huge differences in people's lives. So just a bit of an overview of, you know, how this focus on this specific topic came about. So during the 2021 legislative session, the state legislative session, there was kind of a silver lining of the pandemic with everything going virtual. And it really encouraged a lot more statewide collaboration that wasn't necessarily always there before. So we have 2 COCs, which are Homeless Continuum of Cares in Hawaii. So we have the COCs basically are a group of homeless advocates, homeless service providers, affordable housing advocates, and other related advocates that kind of collaborate together. And so on Oahu, we have Partners in Care, or PIC. And then for Hawaii County, Maui County, and Kauai County, we have Bridging the Gap, or BTG. So these two groups really did a lot of advocacy work together during the legislative session. And so the various bills around rental source of income discrimination came up during this session, and you know, as a piece of legislation that is extremely important to the work that these advocates do. So rental source of income discrimination is discrimination solely based on the fact that a household has governmental housing assistance, like a voucher through, for example, the federal Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program. There are many ads for rentals that exclude these prospective tenants from even applying by having phrases that say, you know, no vouchers or no Section 8. So 11 states plus DC and more than 50 municipalities throughout the US already have laws prohibiting this type of discrimination. So Hawaii is one of the largest metro areas in the country that does not have this type of discrimination prohibition in place. Unfortunately, none of the bills that, that were in the legislative session this year made it, but we hope to build momentum for the next session. So opposition that came up in this session on this issue was mostly around the quote unquote burdensome processes, since these programs are through the government. So opposition was also voiced about having to pay income tax on rental income because the government would issue a W-9 form to landlords. And some also opposed the bills because they believe that this legislation would force a landlord to rent to any prospective tenant with a voucher. So instead, passing a law around this type of discrimination would help voucher holding households to actually get their foot in the door, apply for a rental unit, and allow landlords to get to know who they actually are and really understand their tenancy qualifications instead of just writing them off simply because they have a voucher. So they would be able to be equally evaluated based on the same qualifications as any other applicant for the rental unit. So as we will discuss a bit further along in the presentation, there are many great supports that we would love to connect landlords with to help understand housing voucher processes. So in March of 2021, this year, the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, was passed, and this is the latest recovery package from the federal government. So this included $5 billion in funding for emergency housing vouchers through Section 8. So 70,000 of these vouchers were distributed throughout the US, with over 700 coming to the state of Hawaii, with around 500 on Oahu and over 200 distributed across the 3 neighbor island counties. So we have a minimum total of 708 emergency housing vouchers coming here, with additional vouchers requested by Hawaii County and the Hawaii Public Housing Authority, which we are still unsure if those requests will be granted. So as you can see, the target populations for these specific vouchers are individuals and families who are homeless, at risk of becoming homeless, those fleeing domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, or other similar volatile circumstances, and those who are recently homeless. So the target population requirements for these vouchers will really allow us to make a huge impact in the lives of some of our most vulnerable community members, but we need the landlords to accept these vouchers in order to make sure that we are actually able to utilize this great opportunity to get people into stable housing. So I'm just going to go over a few of the types of vouchers that you may be familiar with, or and that are in our community. So first, we have the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program. People are most likely, most familiar with this voucher program as it is the most prevalent in our communities. So these vouchers come from the federal government and are administered through the counties and the Hawaii Public Housing Authority, or HPHA. So without counting the emergency housing vouchers from the American Rescue Plan Act, there are around 10,000 Section 8 housing choice vouchers throughout the state. For these vouchers, HUD sets market rate rents, which depends on the neighborhood, which allows landlords to get reasonable rents for their area, but also ensures that landlords are not charging unreasonably high amounts to rent to voucher holding households. So in most cases, the voucher holder will pay 30% of their income, and the rest of the rent would be covered by the voucher going straight from the government to the landlord. In most cases, when if a tenant loses their income, the voucher can actually cover the full amount of rent during that time of unemployment. So it's a good flexible resource. So just for you to know of who a lot of these HUD rental, the individuals who are assisted by HUD rental assistance, about 65% of those assisted through HUD are families with minor children. So this rental assistance has been absolutely crucial for thousands of families with children in Hawaii to avoid homelessness. And so the emergency housing vouchers mentioned on the previous slide through the American Rescue Plan Act will function as Section 8 vouchers, but will be just for the targeted populations discussed. So next we have Housing First vouchers. So the Housing First program is for chronically homeless households that have very complex needs and will likely need long-term financial support, as well as other supportive services, which are provided through participation in this program. So Housing First doesn't have a specific time limit because of the many needs that the clients may require. So if these clients have income, they would be required to pay 30% of that income towards rent. But if they have no income, the voucher can cover 100%. So Housing First is mostly funded by the state and for all of our counties, with the city and county of Honolulu also having funding for Housing First programs as well. So in state fiscal year of 2020, there was about 250 households or 350 individuals that were served through Housing First across the state. And then we have rapid rehousing vouchers as well. So rapid rehousing is also for homeless households, but is for those with much less complex needs than Housing First clients. So rapid rehousing clients are those who have much more likelihood of being able to become financially self-sufficient and able to afford their own permanent housing once participation in the program ends. So it basically is a program that helps people stabilize and get on their feet. So this program can serve clients for as short as 1 to 3 months or up to 24 months. And supportive services are provided during, as needed during that time. So again, this program may require clients to pay 30% of their income towards rent while they participate. But service providers run these programs, so they may have different processes for the participants, such as incrementally increasing the portion of rent paid by the client in order to build up to that point of self-sufficiency for rent payments. So rapid rehousing is funded mainly by the state and through certain federal HUD grants. And in the month of April this year, around 1,350 people were being served by rapid rehousing programs throughout the state, which fluctuates because of the nature of the program and the varied amounts of months needed for each client. And so just want to go through a couple of immediate housing needs and opportunities here in Hawaii. So the statewide eviction moratorium that was set to end on June 8th was extended for an additional 60 days to August 6th. And it appears that this will be the last extension for this moratorium. So we really do not want to see additional individuals and families falling into homelessness at the time of the eviction moratorium. So as discussed already, we have about a minimum of 700 new federal vouchers statewide coming into our communities from the American Rescue Plan Act. And there are a couple of Oahu specific programs right now, which open up a lot of opportunities for people, yet also highlight the huge need to engage with more landlords around this topic in order to actually utilize these resources to get people into safe and stable housing. So right now we have the Oahu Housing Now program, which Laura will talk more about a bit later in the presentation. And that is basically, the goal of housing 300 households by September, around 1,000 individuals. So the city and county recently opened up Section 8 applications as well for 1 week and chose 2,000 households by lottery system that it will add to its wait list. And there are also some new rapid rehousing programs coming online through state contracts with agencies such as the Institute for Human Services, or IHS. And then also specific to Hawaii County, there is an interesting opportunity for landlords as well. There's a landlord incentive pilot program that has been created through limited CARES funding to encourage landlords to house our low income or homeless households with Section 8 housing choice vouchers. So this program provides landlords with gift cards to a home improvement stores such as Lowe's or Home Depot, or leasing to Section 8 voucher holding households. So it would be a $500 gift card for a 6-month lease, and a $1,000 gift card for a 12-month lease. And I will turn it over to Laura now.
Thanks, Cheryl. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about the income discrimination and just rental discrimination in general that our folks often encounter. As everyone knows, Hawaii is a very expensive place to live, and yet we still have the need for folks who have lower income jobs and are not able to rent some of the higher end apartments and houses that we have on the island. So they're already starting off with a little bit of a disadvantage. But what we're really trying to do is help folks not only get into housing, but keep them in housing. And that requires a lot of different things to all fall in place. And when discrimination comes about, it's often hidden in different ways. So, our folks often get the complaint of, we don't want to rent to folks who don't have a rental history. And when you've been homeless for any amount of time, or if you have been part of a generationally challenged, poverty challenged family for decades, it's very hard to come out of it and be able to show that you are going to be a good tenant. And so those are some of the things that our folks encounter. We usually have a short rental history. We sometimes have folks who have evictions on their records, and that may be by just pure bad choices that they've made, and there's no denying those things happen, but we want to put their best foot forward and to really help them when they're going into housing. Finding housing, the demand for housing is very high right now. So it's very difficult for our folks sometimes to actually even locate a landlord that is open to renting to them. And so hopefully we will be able to assist with that to decrease the amount of challenges that people face. It's amazing what some landlords will actually tell our Landlord Engagement program. We've had folks that actually will say that they will not rent to a certain nationality, a certain race. And so right there and then it's very obvious to see this discrimination. Sometimes it's a lot more subtle. And so working with folks to be able to help them make their best foot forward with landlords and educate folks on how to talk to landlords, and vice versa. It's also talking to landlords about how they can interact with their tenants to make it a better opportunity. Next slide, Cheryl. Wanted to talk a little bit about what happens when our folks actually do move into housing. And these are true pictures over the last couple of months. Cheryl talked a tiny bit about the silver lining of COVID, and there's actually a lot of silver linings for our programs and folks that we work with, and in turn for landlords, and we need to take advantage of that. For decades here in Hawaii, the numbers of folks who are experiencing homelessness has grown, and we all recognize that. And it's been a very big challenge. It's probably been top of mind for the legislature and all of our policymakers for a number of years, and we recognize that. And it has been very difficult to get out of the very deep ditch that we are in regarding homelessness. Our federal grants have really focused on the truly mentally ill, severely mentally ill, chronically homeless people within our community. And what that often means is that folks that need a little bit of help are often left to the sidelines because we are focusing so much attention on those who have the most vulnerable of conditions like mental illness, like disabilities and chronicity and homelessness. And so during COVID, like Cheryl explained so well, we've gotten a lot of money, a lot of resources coming into Hawaii. And this is truly our opportunity to dig ourselves out of this ditch and to really make an impact across the entire segment of the homeless population so that we can assist people who hopefully will never come back into homelessness. And that is one of our biggest goals, is to make any entrance into homelessness as short and temporary as possible. And so with all these funds coming in, this is our opportunity to do that. So these are pictures over the last couple of months. When COVID hit, so many things just came to a dead stop. Our tourism came to a dead stop. Many of our businesses came to a dead stop. One of the things that actually took off and kept on going and went very strongly is services to our folks who are experiencing homelessness across the islands. Outreach never stopped and actually increased in many ways. And we have even gone out and done vaccination clinics, COVID testing clinics, and so our rates of COVID amongst those experiencing homelessness is extremely low. And so we are very lucky in that regard. And one of the programs that's coming in that Cheryl mentioned was the Oahu Housing Now program. And that program is really focused on getting us through COVID. And the safest way to keep people healthy and safe from COVID is to get them into housing. If they are out on the streets, if they are out on our beaches, there's more of an ability for COVID to be passed around. So our Oahu Housing Now, one of its main features is to get as many folks off of the streets as soon as possible so that they can get through the worst stages of COVID and get through the vaccination and hopefully come out on the other side stronger, both healthy but also ready to go back to work if they were able to work, increase their income and stay stably housed. So these are folks who have all been able to enter into permanent housing over the last several months. We've been very lucky. Our goal is to reach 300 households housed in units by September. That's a huge goal. We normally, in a non-COVID year, we normally as a whole continuum on Oahu, generally house 15 to 20 families a month in our different services and housing resources that we have accessible to our program. We're looking at 50 to 70 a month at this point, which is fantastic. It will help us get as many people off of the streets as we possibly can. And a lot of these stories are stories that many people did not think these folks would ever go into housing. We have one person who has several dogs, and housing folks with dogs can be very difficult. We've got lots of landlords that love pets, but they want one pet, and it's usually a small pet. For our folks who are experiencing homelessness, some of them, these are their best friends. These are their emotional support animals. These are their protectors. And so finding them housing that's really suitable for them can be a challenge, but a challenge is meant to be conquered. And so we've been able to house folks who in previous years would have been a lot more difficult to house. Getting folks, especially children, off of the streets is one of our main goals so that they can have a healthy and safe environment so that they can learn in that environment as well as just feel safe. Next slide, Cheryl. So we have what's called a landlord engagement program at Partners in Care. And this is where, you know, often when we talk about vouchers and we talk about homeless services, the providers, rightly so, are very focused on clients. But Landlord Engagement Program really looks at the issue of housing and homelessness as a partnership between clients, programs, and landlords. Because if we don't have landlords, we won't have anywhere to place people. And so we really want to improve our relationships with the landlords and treat them as well like clients so that they can get the support that they need as landlords and the same support that we can provide for our clients. So some of the main things that we've brought to the table and are really hoping to push out into our community so that landlords and property managers understand is our landlord engagement program enables us to have a central point of contact. You know, if you have an issue with a tenant and you need some support, we have a 24/7 support phone line. And that means that we will get back to you and work with the clients and figure out how we can address tenant landlord issues so that we don't go to the eviction, so that we keep people stably housed. And that's a benefit to both the client who will be in that supportive housing, but it's also a benefit to the landlord because, you know, if an eviction occurs, there's a lot of money built up in that with lawyers' fees and going to court. And then being able to actually remove someone from an apartment can take months. And that is income that you will never get back. And so we really want to recognize that landlords, especially during the pandemic, have taken a huge hit. And we want to acknowledge that and make sure that whenever possible, we can benefit the landlords just as much as we benefit the clients. We also have within our program a damage mitigation fund. And although we can't pay thousands and thousands of dollars above and beyond a security deposit, we can assist with some damage mitigation. And although this has been available within our program for the last year and a half, we have spent almost none of it because we have been accountable and we've been able to be there when a landlord needs us. And so it hasn't risen to the point where clients have damaged apartments. And when they do, if it's above and beyond the security deposit, we try and help out as much as we can. But landlords knowing that that fund is available to them gives them a little bit of peace of mind because, I mean, I own property with my husband, and I know that that's an investment, and we don't want our investment to be taken advantage of, and we want to be able to keep it nice, safe, and intact. And so recognizing that is really important for us. Next slide. So the other big thing with vouchers, and I think some landlords have discovered this during the pandemic, is because of the housing moratorium, eviction moratorium, many landlords have gone months without being paid. And although I know so many of them understand the need for that, and they recognize that the wellness of our clients and not making them homeless is a community effort to stem the tide of going into homelessness, it's still a big hit to all of our landlords. For the landlords who already house folks who have any kind of rental subsidy, those subsidies did not stop during the pandemic. Federal funds were still coming in. If you had a Section 8 voucher, if you had a rental assistance voucher, a rapid rehousing voucher, as long as you were abiding by the rules of the program, your rent was paid. And that's a really important thing to recognize. It's been interesting over the last year with the pandemic. We actually got several units that had been used as illegal vacation rentals. and they were starting to be used for folks who had rental subsidies. And it was because people realized that if they did not switch what they were doing, they weren't going to have any rent for the foreseeable future. So hopefully we convince some folks to keep those rentals in our community and to our local residents, and kept that money flowing and kept that rental income going to those landlords. So along with the actual payment of the rent, vouchers have allowed our tenants to build up a good rental history. And during the time that they're working with any of our programs that provide rental assistance, hopefully they're learning how to become better tenants. You know, when I was 18, I'm sure I wasn't a great tenant, but over time you learn how to be a good tenant. You learn how to speak to your landlord and talk through issues. And that's exactly what we do with our clients. We talk them through issues. If they have mental health issues, we encourage them to get treatment and to make sure that they're keeping their landlords aware of what's going on with them, not their medical history or anything, but just that they might be having a hard time. And that, you know, if we can build those relationships between tenants and landlords, I think overall our communities will be better off. All right, next slide. And we're always looking for more landlords. We were really encouraged. We had an article in the paper the other day, and we had over 25 potential landlords call us in on the same day. And that's what we need. At this point, we're still finding landlords. We're still finding units, but it's getting harder and harder. We have over 200 more households that we need to house before September with our Oahu Housing Now program. And that's a big, big challenge, but we are ready. We are willing and able to push for that. Every single day, our landlord engagement program specialists are cold calling landlords, walking the streets to try and find units here and there. We've been lucky with some of our property managers that they have multiple units that are available to us. But we also go out and find the mom and pop landlords who are willing to rent one of their units to us. And so we are open to that. The other things that we do is we also give incentives to landlords. So if we get new landlords into our program, we can actually give some monetary incentive to bring them on board, to really encourage them and convince them that if you rent to our folks, that it will be hopefully a mutually beneficial situation. Next slide. And then this is lastly, just a little bit about what's going on right now. The Oahu Housing Now program is run by Partners in Care. We're the lead agency, but in no way, shape, or form is this a one program or one agency program. Our case management is done by Family Promise Hawaii and ASI, Alternative Solutions International. We partner with the city. That is our funding source. It's HUD funding through the city. We work with Rotarians and volunteers across the island to help delivery. The picture there is us making a delivery of furniture to new households a couple of weeks ago in the Waianae area. Right now, as you can see, we have 93 households housed. So we're getting almost to a third of our goal. We did that within about the last 2.5 months. The average length from when we enroll a person into the program to when they're actually housed is 18 days. For a person who is out on the streets looking for their own housing, sometime, or even with a program, in the past, that average length of search for a unit has gone 60, 80, 120 days. And that's really, really frustrating for the clients and disheartening. So we are, with our landlord engagement program, we've really boosted that up. Along with all of these wonderful volunteers that have been helping us, we also have donation drives. And we're really trying to make not just a unit available to tenants, but a home. When we offer housing to our clients, we're not offering one unit. we're actually having them fill out a preference sheet. Where would you like to live? Where would you not like to live? What kind of a unit would you like to look at? Would you like to have a 2-bedroom, a 3-bedroom, depending on your household size? And then we offer 2 to 3 units to them to view. And then if they don't like any of those, we can continue the search. And what we're trying to really get to is the dignity of being housed, and the recognition that if people are housed somewhere that they want to be housed, there's more of a likelihood that they will actually stay housed. And that's our whole goal, making sure that they do not re-enter into homelessness. And so with that, we also ask for donations. And so we have actually asked for only new things for our households. So that's, we create home kits, one for the kitchen, one for the bathroom, one for the living space. And that really is recognizing that we can't just move a person into an empty household. We need to move them into a home. We've gotten great partners with Reuse Hawaii. They've given us a lot of donations. We also just are heading out to Aulani Resort next week to pick up our first donation. They are renovating their hotel and donating up to 30 or 40 sleeper couches per month for the next several months to us. So this will be a great, wonderful donation for our families. And our next donation drive is on July 24th, and it will be held at Central Union Church, and from 10 to 1, and we can send you folks a flyer for that. But we really hope that we make this a community-wide project. And that's how we should always be looking at the issue of homelessness. It's not going to be solved by just the providers or just the funders. It has to be solved by everybody coming together and pooling their resources. For us, we know how to work with clients who have mental illness or disabilities or have been homeless for a long time. But some of the things that we can really work on getting better at communicating with the community is if we can get good paying jobs for our folks, then they won't have a need to re-enter homelessness. When we can find affordable housing that they can afford even without a voucher or without government assistance, that will allow them to be in our communities and be able to work in our communities. And so that's what we're really hoping for here. And we're really hoping that, with your groups, but also just word of mouth, getting the word out there that our folks can be very good tenants. And we're here to support not just the clients, but the landlords and the community, because we know homelessness has been a struggle for our entire community for way too long. And with that, I think the next slide, there's some information about our programs and our contact information. And I'll toss it back to Cheryl.
Thank you so much, Laura. That was all amazing information to share. As we have discussed, there's really plenty of misconceptions floating around about programs like Section 8 or about individuals and families who receive this type of governmental assistance. But really having discussions about this topic and learning more is going to be key. So it's going to be so important to be able to start a dialogue on this topic in our communities. So the Landlord Engagement Program, which Laura explained a lot about, on Oahu they're always looking for new landlords, as she said. And they are happy to answer any questions about the process ahead of the landlord's decision to accept tenants or with vouchers assistance. They're there for you to support you in any way. And they're there for you, whatever you may need support. So another resource specific to Oahu landlords is offered through the City and County of Honolulu, the Section 8 office there. So they offer landlord briefings on Section 8 by set sessions each month or by appointment as well. And they also have sessions by appointment to guide landlords through the Section 8 inspection process. So for landlords who are interested in learning more or participating in a Section 8 housing choice voucher program in particular and are in the counties of Hawaii, Maui, and Kauai, it is best to get in contact with your local Section 8 county program through the county housing offices. So, and if this information really speaks to you and you would like to reach out to your communities about it, you know, we are here to support you. Please feel free to reach out and see how we can support. You know, people are doing things like, you know, writing op-eds on this topic, you know, sharing it in their community newsletters. And we would be very happy to provide you more information or support you in this journey. And also, if you're interested in this subject, please you feel free to join us every other Friday. The next meeting on this topic is the 9th of July at 3:30 p.m. to talk more about this campaign of landlord engagement as we report on progress and figure out next steps to work on. So here are our emails, and please feel free to contact us, and we welcome any questions, thoughts, anything. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I can't see everybody on the screen, so if anybody has any questions, please feel free to jump in.
I have a question if I can, Chris. Okay. This is a question for Cheryl. You said early on in the talk that there were several kind of groups of types of objections that people had to the bills that were out there, and this whole idea of the discrimination against vouchers. Could you go over those again? I didn't really get a chance to really understand all of them, and I think it's probably important for me to understand those.
Yeah, I apologize. Sometimes, you know, my voice gets very crackly, so maybe that's why. But I mean, I think the major objections were really around, you know, people thinking that this would force landlords to rent to someone with a voucher holder that applies. But in reality, this type of legislation would, you know, not allow, you know, like the no vouchers or no Section 8 in advertisements. So it would just allow people to get their foot in the door. What was it? Some other opposition, I guess, came in around like having to pay taxes because, you know, since it would be programs through the government, they would issue W-9 forms. And therefore, you know, they would have to pay income on the tax on the rental income. So I think those are like some of the main things. Scott, you can correct me if I'm missing something there.
I think you did a good job, Cheryl.
So don't you have to report your income anyway?
Well, I think some landlords might prefer cash transaction.
So I think particularly on the neighbor islands, I think we have a lot of rentals that are not necessarily reporting the general excise tax or sort of illegal rentals. And that's one of the challenges we're running into right now, not only with trying to house people through programs like Oahu Housing Now or Section 8, but even as, you know, we have emergency rental assistance coming in through the Consolidated Appropriations Act from December and also from American Rescue Plan Act. Unfortunately, many landlords are not accepting that assistance, partially because there's a lot of units that are not necessarily legal in that way. And I think that's something that we need to really do more outreach and education about, and know that there are some potential penalties for those landlords. The other thing is that we want people not to be afraid of renting to people just because they have housing assistance. I think a lot of times there's, you know, people have fear and concern, and in many cases that's just not borne out at all. And even if you do have somebody who's coming from a more difficult place, like I think Laura and Cheryl both shared, there's a lot of supports available to support not only the tenant, but the landlord along the way. And we have so many different programs now coming into community. It's not just Section 8, it's not just Oahu Housing Now. And there's, most of these programs have not only incentives for landlords, but just different types of supportive services embedded in it. And I think it's just about increasing awareness and education about the range of programs that we have in the community right now.
So Cheryl, just to kind of follow up on that, on the tax part thing, I can understand why individuals would be feeling that way. I am perplexed why that would be a good argument with the legislature. Maybe just me.
I think that's come up as something that maybe landlords wouldn't prefer to do. So I don't have a good answer for you. I'm sorry.
Cheryl, no. Let me jump in. I think that's not necessarily an objection that's come up at the legislature. I think we mention it because it's a barrier that's faced. I think the main concerns we heard at the legislature from the Realtors Association and from some private landlords is a concern. Okay, if you rent to people, or if you pass a law that bans discrimination against people who receive Section 8, you're going to force landlords to only accept people who receive Section 8, and you'll give those individuals preference over all others. And that's not the case. There's many different states and cities that have source of income discrimination laws in place. And when you put these types of laws in practice, that's not what happens. All it does is just level the playing field, so everybody has sort of the same place that they're starting from. And I think, again, there's really a huge need to address that type of discrimination, because it's not a protected category right now. And if you look just in any ad online for rental listings, it clearly says no Section 8, no vouchers. And I think Laura said a lot of times that's used to mask other types of discrimination against protected categories, such as families with minor children, women, or gender minorities, or people based on their sexual orientation. So I think that's, again, why the advocacy part of it is so key. And again, it's just raising awareness about that as well.
Thank you.
Sorry for the awkward silence. I'm giving anyone else an opportunity to ask questions. Luckily, Gavin raised his hand right when I said that, so thank you.
Did have a question. I know you mentioned access to a damage fund if needed for rental units for landlords. So that is something that is above and beyond upwards of the security deposit. If the tenants do, even if the tenants do damage to the unit, then there's now a fund that you guys have to assist the landlords with that. And is that just for a particular period of time because of COVID, or is that expected to continue?
We're hoping that we can have that kind of a fund going forward for most programs. So right now we have that with our Landlord Engagement program, and that's a city-run program. And we're hoping that that will continue to get funding for that. We're also going out to philanthropic groups to help with that kind of a fund, because that's kind of a hard fund to continue on a contract basis with the city or the state or the feds, because we don't use it, which is a good thing. You'd think that if we don't use that kind of fund, it's a good thing.
I do want to add, though, for state contracts for housing programs such as like Housing First or Rapid Rehousing, we actually do embed funding for damage guarantees into the state contracts.
Yep.
And I think the city Housing First programs is also a part of it as well. But I think, like Laura is saying, on a larger scale, it's difficult to maintain that type of damage guarantee. And I think what Laura's program is doing is kind of showing how having that helps landlords have more confidence, how they've been able to grow the number of landlords over time. And I think if we can let more people know about the value of that, we might be able to embed it in even more contracts going forward, potentially even the larger scale programs like Section 8.
Yep. Yeah, and that, because we've been able to show that it's been not overused and not used ineffectively, that's really the important part of it, is if we can really work with the landlords and prevent those things from even occurring, hopefully the damages will be far and few between. And that's what we're really going for. And for a lot of landlords, just knowing that that fund is there is a little bit more peace of mind.
This is a little kind of off topic a bit, but you know, I'd heard something about doing like tiny homes, or you know, having like a land where smaller homes or containers, you know, that type of thing could be used. Is there anything new on that?
So I can take this. So the state actually is looking at bringing up a couple different projects that utilize tiny homes or modular units. So one example is the lieutenant governor is actually partnered with an organization called Homemade Hawaii to bring up about 36 tiny home units on the Barbers Point side in Kalailoa. And my office is helping to find funding to kind of provide some supportive services on site. And I think that project's expected to open in September. There's also a couple other projects on the neighbor islands that utilize tiny homes that we've brought online. I think on Kauai, there's a project that opened up in Lehui, and in Hawaii Island, we helped to purchase some tiny homes for expanded shelter capacity during the pandemic. So there's a lot of different uses. I know City and County of Honolulu in their zoning, where they're looking at the permitting, permitting for those types of units in the city building code, and trying to provide flexibility to help encourage more use of more cost efficient design like that. Sorry, it's late in the day, so my mind's not working fully. End of a long week.
Loyal?
I just wanted to follow up with Scott on that. In the 1990s, I think there was also some tiny homes put up, Haleiwa, other places. How successful were those in addressing, you know, homeless situation? Because I believe that's what it was targeted on then, and were success in getting people into real homes eventually.
I think you know, I'm not able to speak to specific projects, but what I can say is this. I think one of the things that we need to be mindful of as we bring up new housing, whether it's tiny homes or any type of housing project, is we have to think of the maintenance longer term. And I think for some of the projects that came up in the early 90s, early 80s, like the Weinberg Village in Waimanalo is one example. Part of the challenge there is there is no funding for maintenance, or no formula for how we generate the revenue for maintenance built into the pro forma for the project moving forward. So like a lot of government projects, over time, the project deteriorates, and then we don't have sufficient reserves to be able to maintain the project over time. And I think that's one of the challenges and lessons that we've learned, is as we build up these projects, we have to be more mindful about the pro forma as we get the project started, to make sure that we have enough that's set aside every year for maintenance reserve, so that we're able to maintain these projects over time and not have them just come up, you know, in the moment to meet the need. Because you want to build projects that are going to last you know, 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, and not just only sort of the immediate need. I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but I think it's something that it made me think of when you mentioned your projects that came up in the 90s.
Peggy.
Can't see. First, Loyal, we don't even know if Scott was old enough to be around in the 1990s to know what was going on, this kind of stuff. But I just wanted to say thank you folks very much. I thought it was very insightful and very helpful with what you talked about. So the way I interpret what I've heard is you're really looking for the landlords. That's your outreach. That's your main point. But you also mentioned things like, you know, volunteers and donations and writing op-eds. What are you looking to the Lions organization for? Are you hoping to reach a broader spectrum, like a bunch of different clubs, and hopefully they can reach out? And also, do you have something like Scott, Laura, and Cheryl's cheat sheet of, the short version, because I thought it was very enlightening. Your talk was absolutely fabulous. But it's like you want to give them an elevator speech, right? Catch a landlord and tell them briefly, what are the highlights?
Yeah, that's a great point, Peggy. Yeah, we try and jam as much information in as possible. And part of the reason for that is because we don't know what's going to inspire someone who's listening. And that's one of the things about making these kind of presentations to communities like the Cyber Lions Club. We don't know who exactly we're talking to and what reach those folks have. And that's exactly what we're hoping for, is a really diverse group of folks who can bring something to the table. So, whenever people ask, what can we do? They really want tangible things to do. And it's not just, oh, you can, come in and do a meal at a soup kitchen or donate a rice cooker. Those tangible things are very solid for people, but it's almost, for every single person, it's a different tangible thing. So if you own a business and you have some openings in your business for employers, we would really love to see you reach out to our organizations and see where that can fit in. Where are the programs that can really team up with you to create a job pathway for folks who are coming out of homelessness that have skills, but because of whatever's going on with them, they have fallen into homelessness. And, that bright spot of being able to get a job and get housing at the same time can be phenomenal. For the donation drives, recognizing that you have a group, you have networks that can come together. For our donation drives, it was a group of my friends who have taken over actually doing the donation drive for us. And we've just been hands off. We've just been picking up the stuff and actually delivering it. But that's what's fantastic. They brought their own group together to really do that. We have Rotarians that come to our office and they collect donations, and then they have, basically it's just a big hangout session for them. And the other day, I think they put together 44 home kits for our families in one afternoon. It was just amazing. So, we'd love it if you folks could really think about what you could bring to the table as individuals and as a group. But yes, our main ask is for landlords and for units so that we can really get people into housing as quickly as possible.
Sorry, I just wanted to add on something. And yes, the main ask, like Laura said, is, around landlords and getting people into housing. But, these are also people that are your neighbors, so just kind of creating that community awareness. These are just regular people that just need, a safe and stable place to live. It's not like they're, some, I don't know, people that people have a lot of misconceptions about these things. So just kind of creating that dialogue and creating awareness, I think, is important, no matter if it's landlord, whoever it may be. I think it's just really important, and figuring out best ways to reach out in your communities and your networks to be able to communicate that best to that specific group.
Thank you. And I don't know how much you guys know about the Lions organization, but we are the world's largest service organization. And kind of the difference with the Rotarians, it seems like the Rotarians are all business owners too, right? So that might be a difference. So I shouldn't probably say this, but right, maybe Lions don't have so much money, but you never know, right, where the money can come from. But also, the Lions volunteer a lot, and that's where something is that you could look at as well. And I think I had. Could you explain again the donations? You said you want it to be new stuff, right? Everything needs to be new. And
yep, we're really asking for new donations. We have a full flyer that we can send to you folks. It has our high priorities, middle priorities, lower priorities. So it really, we ask for extremely specific things so that you folks can actually, pick up what's actually needed. So that's really helpful. Laundry baskets, sheets, kitchen supplies, things that once you see the list, you'll be kind of like, yeah, of course they need utensils. Of course they need bowls. And that's just not what we get a lot of donations of. And so it's great to get clothes, but to be honest, we don't need any clothes. Our folks are doing fine with that. I'd rather give them a spatula and a pot so they can actually cook something. And so, we have a very specific list that will really help guide anybody who is on their way to Target can pick up a few things and donate it. And although we're having a donation drive on July 24th, we can always pick up stuff. We can always coordinate that outside of that. It's just making a big deal about a donation drive brings attention to that specifically. And then also we're really hoping, we're really focusing on these 300 families in the next couple of months, but we're also hoping that as, Cheryl, Scott, and I, we really are working on the whole island of Oahu, and Scott and Cheryl are even beyond that with the whole state. We're not going to be territorial about stuff. We really want to make sure that all the programs, all the clients across the island really have access to everything. So when we have other clients that are outside of our specific program that need stuff, we want to be able to help funnel things to the right programs when they need them. So whether we're working with IHS or Family Promise or someone else, getting their needs met is a community-wide issue.
Laura, I wanted to add something kind of jumping off what you said. We've talked a lot about Oahu Housing Now, and I think one aspect of that I really want to highlight, it's a different way of thinking about how we house people. And one of the things that they've done with that project is they're housing people in through what they call housing surges or housing fairs, where they do these events among the providers and they're housing a bunch of people all at one time. And that's really accelerated the number of people we're getting into units, but it also creates the opportunity to partner with volunteers whenever we have one of those housing surges, because you're moving everybody in all at once. And I know, about maybe a month ago or so when you had your first one, I think there was somebody who reached out wanting to volunteer at that time. And it was a really great opportunity for this person and all of their colleagues. I think they were a military member. They were able to come out and really provide that support over the following weekend to help people get into homes. And I think it was a real life-changing thing that it gave them the experience of just seeing how it changes a person when they get the keys to move into their own unit. So I think that might be another opportunity for service-oriented organization like the Lions to help when we have these big housing fairs. And I think the idea is to move it beyond just Oahu Housing Now, but as we continue to house people throughout our system, to be able to partner with groups like yours to help make that happen. And I think there's going to be a need for partnerships at every level, especially following the end of the eviction moratorium, because even though we have rental assistance, even though we have additional help and mediation programs, what likely is going to happen in mediation is people are going to have to negotiate a move out date. And we're going to need to have that support system in place to have the landlords, to have the volunteers, to have the donations to help people make that transition to a new home. And that's why we're reaching out to groups like yours and really trying to get that word out now. So I wanted to kind of add that on top of what Laura said. And we're all in this together. I think, her organization, our office, I feel like we work for the same place because we see each other almost constantly. And I think we really complement what the other does. And so it's really a partnership, and we're looking for more partners to join up with us along the way.
And I hope you were able to get some success, like with for example, the Waikiki 2000 Lions Club, with whom I first met you. They do a lot of this kind of stuff. Just that's the nature of their club. And like Juanita Brown and their club, they helped furnish, I think, a drug addiction home or something. I can't remember the specifics of it, where they all provided the household equipment, etc. So I think definitely being able to work with the Lions at different levels would be helpful. And also On the administrative side, is that also something where you may need help with, the numbers and, the paperwork and that kind of stuff? I guess maybe during a surge, but also you see this big thing looming, right? And you're going to prepare the best that you can, but maybe hopefully you can talk to more Lions clubs and get them involved. And you do know that we're on neighbor islands as well, right? Okay, cool.
Hi. Okay, so I had a question as well, kind of on a broader scale, though. I guess with homelessness and moving them into housing and things like that, there's a lot of issues that may come with homelessness in general. It's not so much just getting someone off the street, putting them in a unit. There's a lot of services they may need, whether it be on the mental health side, whether it may be on the drug addiction recovery side, financial literacy side, workforce development side. Do you guys, I guess, have partnerships in place with other organizations to provide those types of wraparound types of services, or are there links? Are there gaps in links right now that you guys are trying to plug, or is it kind of you guys got full stop shop things going on?
I wish we could say there's enough services to go around and really help everybody as much as they need it. For most programs, there's case management built into most housing programs. So that case manager is really responsible for figuring out what those wraparound services need to be and getting those to them. Unfortunately, there is somewhat of a gap in substance use treatment and being able to get people into treatment for the right amount of time. But a lot of the services can actually be put in place in the community. And that's what we've really been seeing. I mean, we just recently had an increase, new opening of the state hospital and an increase in beds there. So we're really hoping that, that will help alleviate some of the issues for those who are extremely severely mentally ill. We've got wonderful court system that works on mental health, but we want to get to folks before they go to the court system, before they go to prison, before they go to jail, and prevent that from happening. And until, up until now, getting into the state hospital, you basically had to commit a serious crime in order to actually go there. And that's really been a frustrating thing, because we actually have folks that need that type of treatment and are actually willing to get it, but they can't access it. So there are definitely gaps in services in substance abuse and mental health, but I think we've got better partnerships than we've ever had before with like the adult mental health division, the adult drug abuse system. I mean, the court system, the fact that there's a mental health court at this point is wonderful, because it enables different segments of the system to be part of the process. We now, over the course of COVID, there was actually quarantine and quarantine facilities for folks who got COVID. And there were some that were very specific to addressing those who were experiencing homelessness. During that process, for years, we've been talking about trying to get stabilization beds in place. And so another silver lining for COVID was that these quarantine facilities were actually kind of turned into stabilization beds. And that short amount of time that people were actually spending in these quarantine facilities for COVID turned into opportunities for them to get other types of services across the board. And Scott, you can add to that.
Oh, no, I mean, I was just gonna say, long story short, I think there are always gaps, unfortunately. But like Laura said, I think she and I actually both started in this sector generally around the same time. And I think over that period of time, I'm not gonna say how long it is, but it's been a while. We've actually seen the partnerships improve, more people coming to the table, like Laura said. There's a lot of things behind the scenes that we're working on that I think people don't see. One of the biggest things that's launching this month is we're partnering with the health plans to Medicaid, and we were able to obtain a waiver a couple years ago to have the health plans be able to come on board as partners to provide these additional supportive services and be able to bill Medicaid for that. So the state and city don't have to bear the whole cost. That might be a somewhat wonky thing, but I think it really is something that's a game changer. And when you look at providing housing, housing is healthcare, because if you can provide the supportive services to get over a roof over someone's head, it just improves their whole condition overall. So, right now, one of the things I was working on, kind of multitasking while Cheryl and Laura are speaking, is sending out invites for a meet and greet with providers to get that program up and running. I think other things is that we now have homeless liaisons in our Department of Education to help homeless students in our public education system to be able to get the full support that they need throughout that process. That was something that started shortly after I was in this role, maybe about 5 years ago or so. We've also really increased partnerships with hospitals at the emergency rooms and with law enforcement. I think when Laura and I first started, police weren't necessarily seen as partners in the homeless service sector, but now they're one of our most critical partners when it comes to outreach, and we're doing joint programs with them like the Hono at Kehi Lagoon that's run by HPD. And they're actually a social service provider just like any of the other members in Laura's organization and Partners in Care. So I think the partnerships have increased, and that's helping us fill the gap. But unfortunately, homelessness is one of those issues where there's always more need than I think there is supply or partnerships to address that need.
Anyone else? Any more questions? Going once, going twice, and all right. Well, thank you, Scott, Cheryl, and Laura for coming on with our conversation and giving us your words of insight, wisdom, and helping us kind of get more content out there to everybody else to so we can kind of post it, and more people can, outside of Lions Circle as well, can kind of learn about the issues going on, and if there's something they can do to help the cause as well. Hopefully they'll help take up the mantle and join in as well. That said, everybody, thank you for tuning into our Hawaii Cyber Lions Club conversation tonight. Thank you, everybody, and we will stop the recording now.